Hello and welcome to the show. How are you all tonight? You good? Well, I can assure you folks this show was put together very much at the last minute. It was about 6 days ago, and I realised that this would have been the weekend of the Scottish UFO conference. So I got together with Ron Halliday to put something together for you, and also to celebrate 25 years of the Falkland Incident. Now, there's not actually a lot of information available on the internet about Falklands, so this show is very much, if you like, a kind of time capsule. So we're going to provide some information that future researchers can use as a resource as well. Hopefully, before it's all completely forgotten online anyway. And also, it's been 25 years since I last did any kind of ufological media project. So it's good to be back doing some ufological things after such a long time. So, coming up on tonight's show, we're going to be looking at three cases for you, and the format's going to be that I'm going to take you on if you like, a virtual tour of the locations of these incidents, and Ron Halliday is going to provide us with the details. So just let me get my auto cue up, because I want to make sure that I don't forget to tell you anything. Now, the reason we're doing this as a live stream is because the beauty of live stream is that it is interactive. You can communicate, you can interact with me, and if you've got any questions, we can store them, and I can pass your questions on to Ron Halliday to answer later on. Now, we already have our first raconteur. We have William Ritchie. Welcome, William, to the show. William's a good friend of mine, and we've worked on many video projects in the past. I don't think we've done a ufological project, but William and I did actually go out to one of the sites a few years ago. So welcome to the show. Yes, this is an interactive show, folks. You can say hello, you can ask questions, just use that message box there. That's for you to use. So I'm Vince from Vincent Anthony Media. I'm just going to bring up my wee logo here, and we're going to be looking at three main cases tonight. So we're going to be looking at the classic Deckman incident tonight, and we're also going to look at our headliner, which is the Falkland Incident as well. Plus, we're going to look at what happened in Blair Gowrie. But before we go into these, before we go on our UFO adventure, our virtual tour, I'm just going to give you my 2 cents about what I think about the whole UFO stroke alien question, because I've very much been interested in this subject for as long as I can remember. And in the 90s, I used to go to the conferences down in Sheffield and Leeds, and I used to go and buy up all the second-hand UFO books, and I used to see headliner speakers like Bud Hopkins, and I had a great time. It was a golden era, and also there were the psychic channelers who were channeling extraterrestrials and recording their channelings onto audio tape. And this is just pre-digital, so I remember on Sundays myself and my friends would go to our friend's house and listen to these channeled audio tapes of messages from the Ashtar Command or Metatron or people like that. It was definitely a golden time, and it was the time of when UFO abductions were having their heyday. There was lots of UFO abductions, lots of books, uh, lots of movies. It definitely was a golden time, and perhaps maybe I will return to England and Sheffield and Leeds and go back to the conferences again. I feel a renewed interest. So we welcome some more raconteurs to the show. Welcome Haley Pender and Kenneth Ray. Welcome to the show, folks, and I hope you enjoy the show tonight. So yes, I was saying about my own particular interest in this subject, and I've bought the books. I've gone to the conferences in the 90s. I used to do camera work, video camera work for some UFO investigators and researchers, and a lot of these videos would end up being shown at the big conferences in Sheffield and Leeds. We welcome Sean Robertson. Welcome, Sean, to the show. I know Sean very well, and Sean is also interested in the UFO subject, so I hope you enjoy the show tonight, Sean. Yes, my own thoughts on the UFO subject after being interested in it for over 40 years. Now let me find my autocue. I've lost my autocue already. Where's my autocue? I lost my autocue. I hope I can find it. Oh, I found it. Here we go. I'd panic if I lost my autocue completely, because I don't want to forget to tell you anything. Yes, my own observations about this phenomena after 40 years of being interested in it. I think the facts are that weird stuff does happen. It does happen. I've never seen a flying saucer or an alien, but I've seen some weird stuff, and it really does happen. Any skeptics that say this stuff never happens at all, I disagree. It weird stuff does happen, and UFOs do exist. They've been captured on photographic film. They've been captured on video. They've been captured on radar. They've been seen by numerous witnesses, pilots and police officers. So the UFOs, they do actually exist. They're not completely imaginary. And also what I've discovered is that the phenomenon is temporary as well. It's kind of here today, gone tomorrow. It never seems to stick around. This fits in very much with the Taoist philosophy of that things manifest and they unmanifest. So we're here on this earth plane for a short time and then we're gone. And the UFO phenomena, the alien phenomenon, seems to fit in with that pattern. They don't stick around very long. And also the other thing is that we've never actually had any physical evidence of flying saucers or alien craft. There's never actually been a piece of a craft available in a museum to this day, and that's the other strange part of the phenomenon. I actually like the explanation given in the Matrix movie, Matrix Reloaded. Let's just dial in our image here of the Oracle. Now this is the Oracle's the lady on the right, and she's talking to Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, and she's actually explains in this scene about UFOs, aliens, and ghosts, and she says that these things are like software errors in the Matrix, and that they shouldn't really be here. And that kind of fits in with what I think, because scientists now accept the holographic model of reality very much so now, and the movie makers they were 25 years ahead of the scientists, and that's what I think. I think definitely the UFO alien stroke ghosts they're like software errors that shouldn't really be here. And again, that to me confirms why they're very much a temporary phenomena, much like bugs in a software program. Eventually, they get removed. And I'm also going to key in another image, which I quite like. In the 80s, there we are. in the 80s, there was a program called Chalky, and this is a book written by John Wyndham. He actually wrote it in the 50s stroke 60s, and it's the story of a young boy who is contacted by an extraterrestrial, and it projects its mind as a kind of holographic image, as you can see in the picture here. And the Chalky series, there were 3 of them, are currently on YouTube. If you've not seen this before or heard of it, I know quite a few people that have never heard of Chalky. I used to love watching Chalky in the 80s when I was at school, and they made 3 series. There was Chalky, Chalky's Children, and Chalky's Challenge. And throughout that series, I think it was Chalky's Children, the special branch, if you like, the spooks grab all these children and put them into a kind of asylum to study the children, to see how this alien's affecting their minds. And what the Chalky's doing is it's advancing these kids' knowledge of maths and physics and science. And in one episode, I remember that the spooks actually trap Chalky in some kind of device, and the children get together, they rally around, and they help free. They use their minds to free this alien, and it goes back to its planet quite happily. So to me, this is the kind of contact that to me would fit in with what I believe in. But this message box is here for you folks. Why not say what you think about the UFO subject? What are your beliefs? What do you think? That's what this message box is for. Come and put your messages up, so it's not just my content. So that's what I think about the subject after 40 years of being interested in this. And towards the end of the show, I'll be mentioning some groups and organisations that you might not have heard of. And also, tonight, I will be bringing you an exclusive report. But we're going to leave that till the end, because I think I've done all my main introductions. Just checking my auto cue here, that I haven't missed anything out. And yeah, I think we're fine now. So if you're ready, we're going to bring you our first report, and that is our headliner case, which is the Falkland mystery. Okay, it's 25 years old. So the format is going to be, I'm going to give you a virtual tour, and then Ron's going to give us the details. So if you're ready, we're going to run VT, and let's start off with the tour. Well, I'm on my way to Falkland, Fruki, to take you to some of the locations in the Falkland Incident. Now, I wasn't involved in any of these investigations, but over the decades, I've been a cameraman on various paranormal video projects with various investigators. And so I've heard some of the case material over the years. So my very basic understanding of the Falkland Incident was that 2 families were in one car driving to Fruki to buy coffee, and then they were off to the Fruki petrol station to buy a UFO magazine, which I think is significant and also a bit odd as well at the same time. That's just my opinion. And the story goes that at some point on that trip, the families saw the UFO and the aliens and went closer to get a closer look. And the next thing I remember hearing is that because of the publicity that the case, the worldwide publicity that the case got, one of the families actually had to move away to Wales, and that was the last I ever heard about it. So we're off to show you some of these locations, and then we'll be speaking to some of the UFO experts who are going to give you the much more detail. I'm now driving into Newton of Falkland itself, and this is where one of the families in the case actually were living at the time. So it's going to be interesting to visit this village. I'm quite excited to come to the first location here of this incident. So it's just coming into Fruki now. Well, I thought I was in Newton of Falkland. I'm actually in Falkland now. No, I'm not. I'm in Fruki now. Falkland looks completely different from Fruki. I'm in Fruki now. However, we're at one of the locations of the story because part of the story was the families were travelling from Newton of Falkland to Fruki to buy some coffee. And I'm guessing there's only one place they would buy coffee in Fruki, and that's from the local Spar superstore. So I'm just going to have a quick look about and take a shot of the Spar. So another part of the story that I heard was that the families headed off to the local services near Falkland to buy a UFO magazine. Now, whether that actually happened or not, I don't know, but let's go and have a look and see the next location of the story. So that's me just fueled up at the petrol station, the famous petrol station, where the families are said to have stopped to buy a UFO magazine, which is a little bit odd considering shortly afterwards they would have experienced one of the most famous UFO incidents in Scotland. So I'm now off to see if I can find the landing site. I'm not exactly sure if I've got it right, but I'm going to see how close I can get and see if we can get the quadcopter on, get some nice aerial shots of the landing site for you. Onwards and upwards, literally. So I'm here in, I've got as far as I can go with getting to the location, because I've just seen a sign saying private road to Lathrisk Farm. Now, I don't know, but in Scotland we don't really have trespass laws, so I don't know how people can put up notices saying private road, but rather than get into trouble, we'll just try and get a shot with the quadcopter as high as we can to see if we can get you a reasonable shot of as close as I'm able to get to the landing location without causing any bother from Jobsworths. Well, that's me at the end of my Falkland UFO journey. I'm going to head back now. My GoPro's running out of juice very quickly. So today I've been stung by nettles, I've got lost, I've got as far as I can go regarding legally or maybe illegally trying to get as close to the landing site as possible. I'm surrounded by cyclists and cars. I'm in the middle of nowhere, but I'm surrounded by cyclists and cars, so I'm just going to head back now and get my quadcopter cleaned up. It's sliced and diced quite a few insects and blades of grass. And join me for the next part of our UFO story on the next case. Bye for now. Cut! So that was my first attempt to get a shot of the landing site. Didn't quite get there. So since that little video, we welcome some more raconteurs to the show. We welcome Hayley Pender, Nick Patterson, and we have Ron Halliday. Welcome to the show, Ron. Now, I'm glad Ron's joined us here in cyberspace, because it means that you can now ask questions about any of the cases that come up tonight, or anything about UFOs, or anything about Ron's work. You can ask questions, and Ron is able to answer on the message board here. And that's the beauty, again, of doing this as a live stream show. It's interactive. You can talk to me, or you can talk to Ron. So welcome, Ron. I'm glad you've joined us tonight. Now, we also have Nick Patterson. Welcome, Nick. Nick's asking, he said he can't stay too long. What's going to happen? Well, this show is going to be recorded to YouTube of the same channel name, Vincent Anthony Media. So if you go to YouTube and type in Vincent Anthony Media, you'll be able to see the show in its entirety and watch it as many times as you want. I'm going to upload that tonight after the live broadcast is over. So you've seen a little bit of the area where the Falkland incident happened. We're now going to go to Ron Halliday, and let's listen to what Ron had to say about the details of the case. Run VT. So now I'm going to ask Ron to tell us about the famous Falkland Incident.
Yeah, well, this was a quite remarkable series of events that took place in 1995, which I did write about in UFO Scotland. As I said, there are quite a few different aspects to it, but it started off, I would say, fairly straightforward, really, when two women were driving to a shop to get a magazine. Some claims that this was for a UFO magazine. However, on the way there, they saw this strange object. They got the magazine, drove back, and encountered another strange object, which they thought could have been the same as the first one. But this had bright lights and drove straight towards them. They went home and decided they'd go back and see if they could find out where this object had actually landed. So they went back and they saw this object lying in a field. In fact, eventually there were two objects in this field. And they got a pair of binoculars, and they observed these objects through the binoculars, and what they saw was really quite strange, to say the least. There were various types of alien entities, for want of a better expression, wandering around the field. There was a tall one and some small ones, and the tall one seemed to be, if you like, the overseer, seems to be organising these small beings, and they were collecting stuff, balls and other material, and putting it into these objects, spacecraft, for want of a better description. And the way the experience finished was strange, because when they'd got more of the family there, and when they were watching these through binoculars, these objects and entities through binoculars, some balls, big balls, came rolling towards them, and they could see these entities inside these balls with, so they said, these sort of black staring eyes. So they turned around and ran, jumped in the car and went home. Now that wasn't the end of the experience by any means, because they started having strange dreams, and the boy, the wee lad they had, he claimed that an alien had come into his bedroom, and that the alien being had actually gone in the car to school with him. So, as I've said, this was a really complicated series of events. I've telescoped it a little bit because there's been quite a lot of, there's quite a lot of things happening. But basically, just to recapitulate again, two women were driving to the shop. They were buzzed by a UFO. They saw it land. They went to find out where it had landed. They saw these two objects in a field with these entities running around. They watched them. They seemed to be picking stuff up and putting it into the spacecraft. And then it looked as if they'd either been spotted or they were being threatened by these balls rolled towards them. And the aftermath in the house with the dreams, and the wee boy, 10-year-old I think he was, claiming that an alien had visited him in his bedroom, had actually gone in the car with him to school.
So it's an absolutely fascinating story, but if you want to go out to Falkland and investigate, I'm afraid you're out of luck, because Ron, am I right in saying that one of the families actually moved away down south?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, I mean, I think that's been one of the issues, is actually following up these experiences, because family moved away, and which left the field open to quite a lot of speculation about the nature of the incident. Did it all happen in the sense that did imagination, as it were, build on actual experiences? Because it is a very, very strange and quite detailed story. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most detailed accounts that I've heard in terms of people having UFO experiences, and quite over quite a lengthy period of time. We're talking about several hours. So it's a complex incident, and bringing together whole piles of things. UFO sightings, spacecraft, alien beings actually in a field doing some kind of work or whatever, and then being attacked or threatened by strange balls. It's certainly, I would say, one of the more elaborate UFO encounters that you can read about in ufology.
Now, from what you've heard Ron speak about in our interviews, if you want to get in touch with Ron, if you want to find out more about the UFO subject, or if you want to find out about Ron's books or the conferences that Ron's organising, how do people get in touch with you, Ron?
Yeah, Vincent, well, they can get in touch with me via Facebook. Put Ron Halliday into the search, and hopefully it will come up with me.
Ron Halliday, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vincent.
So that was Ron there on giving us some details on the Falkland Incident. And since that little film's been running, we welcome some more raconteurs. So welcome Linda Stark. Welcome the Carsden Quisler. And Willie Kay. Welcome to the Okay, that's enough of the DJ horn. It becomes annoying after too many hits. So welcome, folks, and hello to Linda Stark. And while Linda's here with us, I just want to mention, if you live in the central Scotland area, and if you're online, there's a meetup group called The Unexplained, and Linda is one of the organisers. Linda and Duncan run the Unexplained meetup.com group, so you might want to check them out and join up. And before lockdown, we used to have regular meetings and have events, and if it hadn't been for lockdown, I would have been with the Unexplained group. We would have gone in a group to the Scottish UFO conference this weekend. So welcome, Linda. Enjoy the show. And again, if you want to check out the meetup.com, if you live in the central Scotland area after lockdown, you'll be able to come along to the meetings that are generally held in Edinburgh. And it's a very sociable event, and we pass information about different things. It's not just about UFOs, it's paranormal, it's conspiracy theories, ghosts, everything. Just check out The Unexplained on meetup.com, and there's a description of all the different types of interests that people have in the group. So I hope you enjoy the show tonight, Linda. Okay, so that was Ron gave us some details. Now, I didn't give up on trying to find the landing location, so let's run VT and see how I got on when I tried to nail this one. Run VT. Day 2. Yesterday I didn't manage to get you very close to the actual landing location of the Falkland Incident, so today I'm off to Falkland to climb Falkland Hill to see if I can get you an aerial shot of the landing site. So let's see how we get on. Our lecturers photography lecturer at West Lothian College many years ago said to us that the journey to take an image is just as important as taking a good image. Sometimes the project is just about the journey, because you may not even make it to get the image alive, or you may make it and it may be a struggle. Now, I'm still at the bottom of the hill, so this is going to be a struggle, because once we come out of the trees, it's going to be so hot and I've no water. I will be struggling to get this shot, but onwards and upwards. Don't even know if this is going to be in focus. Look at those stairs. And I'm still at the bottom of the hill. Apologies if this shot's not in focus. I should have brought the GoPro. Every time I think, no, I'll not bring the GoPro, not need it. I need it. Anyway, apologies if I'm not in focus, but I've just met a passerby and he said we're halfway, which is good news. I thought we were only about an eighth of the way. I mean, if you look here, I don't know if this is in focus, but that's where we've got to go. It looks a lot further, but I can see people ascending or descending the hill right now, and I'm slipping, already slipping. I've got hill walking boots on. All this just for one shot or two, onwards and upwards, literally. Do you know what I feel like? I feel just like Lai Chan-Kane in the Gong Fu TV series. At the beginning, you know, those shots where he's carrying his bedroll, except I've got a tripod instead of a bedroll. I feel the same, and I'm not barefoot, but it's hot and it's dusty, just like Lai Chan-Kane in Opening credits have gone through. I reckon the landing location was somewhere in the distance, somewhere about here. If I zoom in. Most people come to Falkland to visit Falkland's Palace, which you can see in the distance. So there we are. We had the landing site, got there eventually. That was the best place that I could get a shot of the nearest I could get to the landing site. And to be honest, folks, I don't even know if that is actually the landing site. There's been a bit of confusion over when I was doing some research and asking various researchers where exactly did this happen. People had a rough idea, so I think I roughly got you to showed you the actual location roughly where this event happened all those years ago. So, since that little movie started, we welcome some more raconteurs to the show. Welcome, Laura Binney. Laura Binney of Glass Bullet Media Productions, another video company in Fife. And also, we welcome Jay Robertson. Welcome to the show, Jay. Enjoy the show, and thanks all for your very kind comments. And Ron has just put up a message saying that the UFO conference will go ahead in 2021, and so I'm looking forward to attending that, and looking forward to perhaps meeting some of you at the conference next year. It's 2021. It's on. It's game on. So that was the Falkland Incident. That was our headliner event. Now we're going to move on to the mysterious occurrence that happened in Blair Gowrie. So without further ado, we're going to go straight over to Ron again, and Ron's going to tell us what happened. Run VT. So today I'm joined with Ron Halliday, paranormal investigator and author. Welcome to the show, Ron.
Welcome.
So before we start talking about the different cases, Ron, let's talk about your books. Can you tell us about your UFO books that you've written?
Yeah, well, I've written UFOs, the Scottish Dimension, McKeck, Scotland's X-Files, and UFO Scotland, which have covered a range of Scottish cases in the main, with some comparison with cases outside of Scotland. But basically what I was trying to do was to get on record some of the more interesting cases and take a look at the extent of UFO reports in Scotland and the whole period, because I don't think people are aware that the first reported UFO sighting in Scotland took place as far back as July 1947. Not long after the UFO wave hit the news in the USA.
So Ron is also involved in running some of the Scottish UFO conferences that are held every year. How many have you done so far, Ron?
Well, we've done 5 so far. It's a UFO and Paranormal conference, so we cover UFO events. Usually have a speaker about UFOs, but we cover a range of topics, poltergeists, ghosts, earth mysteries. There's a whole range of things. We normally have 7 speakers, so you do get quite a bit of variety, and only £10 for the whole day. Yeah, so the first one was in 2015. So we had to cancel this year's one, obviously, but we're rolling that forward to 2021.
So, first of all, I'm going to ask Ron to tell us about the Blair Gowrie incident. Ron, tell us what happened.
Yeah, well, this was quite a complicated event actually, which involved various incidents. I mean, it centred around a woman, Gwen Freeman, who in 1984 was sitting in her garden in Riverside Road in Blair Gowrie when she saw kind of sparkling taking place in a bush in front of her. And then she saw a beam of light which shot skywards. And so when she looked up, her and the son was there, they both saw this hovering Yale-shaped UFO. And they reckoned it was about 150 feet long. Obviously they were absolutely astonished when they saw this object, and they all got in touch with the police as well, because they discovered there had been reports of a similar object seen in the area. The police certainly came round, and I think, as far as I can remember, they maybe even took some soil samples or something like that. But there were some other strange incidents which were linked up with that. I mean, they saw 12 oddly dressed men in black clothes walk in a straight line into the next door neighbour's house. But when they inquired about it to the neighbours didn't seem to know anything about it. So that was really peculiar. And then shortly afterwards, I think a few days later, they found two people at the door dressed in what they describe as odd clothing, like something out of the 1920s. And this couple was a man and a woman. They told the Freemans that they must not talk about the incident that they had experienced, or a great evil would come of it. Now, all these incidents were connected. You know, whether there was some connection with them, it's obviously hard to be sure about. But they were certainly convinced at the time when I visited them with another UFO colleague, and the actual event, or when they talked about the event, that was actually video at the time. But they connected up these incidents, and all three incidents are obviously extremely odd. But whether there was some link between them, or there was some link just formed in their mind afterwards, I don't know. But certainly one of the most strange events and complicated events that I've come across in years of investigating UFO encounters.
Now, Ron, was there not, I've got a memory of there being an incident with a helicopter, a mysterious black helicopter.
That is correct, yeah. That was something else. Yeah, there was supposedly a black helicopter in the area which seemed to be filming. As far as I can recall, they said they had a box slung underneath the helicopter, and they thought it was either searching for something or recording something. So, I mean, there were all these, events which you had the strange light, you had the mysterious hovering object, large, 150 feet they reckoned it to be. Then you had the visit by the police who said there'd been reports of this object elsewhere in the area. Then you had these 12 oddly dressed men, dressed all in black. They looked, as if it was, looked like, I think they said it looked like, or maybe the kind of dress that rabbis or Jewish Orthodox people wore. And you had these two people coming to the door. So, I mean, there was a strange kind of collection of things. And though I think a colleague, he did actually consult with the police and asked if they'd had a report of it or kept a report of it, and I think the answer was no, they didn't have, or they hadn't actually kept the report, because it was a few years after the actual incident, maybe 6 years after the incident, yeah. And so I think it was difficult to actually track down any report at the time.
So Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but did the family not end up moving away from Blair Gowrie?
They did, that's correct, yeah. Well, the actual Gwen Freeman, the actual woman, by the time we were there, she had died, as far as I recall, and the son had actually moved down south. Yeah.
And Ron, was that due to the incident, or was that just for natural reasons?
Well, I think it was just natural reasons, as far as I'm aware. I think by the time we'd met him, he was planning to move anyway. So I don't know if it was connected, because there was a gap between the actual sighting, which was in '84, and when I and other colleagues became aware of it, which would have been 1990. So there was this gap, and I think in that interval, the family had decided to move.
Now, Ron, can you tell us, does that area of Blairgowrie, is there a history of strange phenomena in the area?
Well, I mean, there's certainly reports of UFO sightings. I mean, there was a crop circle, Ardblair Estate, which isn't far away. There was reports of a crop circle there. Certainly reports of strange lights. I mean, I went out to Ardblair Castle and spoke to one of the witnesses there, and so there have been various odd things taking place in the area. I can't remember it being what you might call a UFO hotspot, but there certainly had been other sightings over the years.
Now, the other thing, Ron, I remember, and I can't remember if it was yourself or someone else that said it, but someone said when we were filming the Freemans that there are tectonic plates right where the river is, and that when tectonic plates rub, they can create paranormal type effects.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think there was some claim connection between that, in the sense that tectonic plates can cause balls of light to emerge, and there could be some connection between that and UFOs. And I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't occur, but in this particular instance, people actually saw a large object. So it wasn't just a ball floating about, although I will say that I know balls of light had been reported in the area. So there's maybe some connection between plate movement or creating some kind of phenomenon like that. But I think the Freeman's experience, I think, didn't actually bring in that kind of effect. It was more detailed, it was more complex. So I'm not ruling that out in terms of general UFO sightings, but I think in this particular incident, I don't think it fitted in with what they experienced.
So that was Ron Halliday telling us about the Blairgowrie incident. Now, I'm pleased to see that a lot of you are now interacting with Ron, that you're asking questions, and Ron's answering your questions. So that's really great to see the interaction. That's the whole point of doing this as a live stream. And Laura came in earlier and said that she's done the Falkland Hill trek, and it really is actually harder than it looks. So I don't think I'll be doing the Falkland trek for a good long time, probably never again. But anyway, so we've heard Ron's description of the Blairgowrie event. Let's have a look at the actual location of the Blairgowrie event. Run VT. Well, it's day 3 of filming, and I'm on my way to Blairgowrie to show you the location of the Sid Freeman case. Now, our UFO expert is going to fill you in on the details of the case, but it's going to be interesting because I haven't been there for over 25 years, so I'm going back to the location of where it happened. So join me in a bit. Well, I'm here actually on the street where the Sid Freeman case happened, and it's been about 25 years since I was last here with Ron Halliday filming this case for a UFO conference presentation in England back in the 90s. And I don't know a lot about the case, but the story goes that Sid was at home with his parents, and they saw a line of men walking up the path, and they were described as being Yiddish in appearance. And the strange thing was that when they walked up the path, the gate opened by itself without them touching it. And the other thing I remember about this case is that before that happened, I think there was an unmarked black helicopter hovering over their house, and underneath was suspended a black box with a red light underneath, and very odd. And the only other thing I remember is that to my right there's the river, and I remember one of the investigators when I was doing camera on the shoot saying something that there are some tectonic plates right here by the river, and that when these tectonic plates rub, they can cause strange paranormal phenomena type effects. And that's all I really remember about this case. But our UFO expert will tell you the full details. But it's nice just to be back here after 25 years. It's a really lovely place, and actually the rain's threatening to come on, so I think I might have just got my shots just in time. Cut! So that was me at the actual location, the street where the mysterious Blair Gowrie incident happened all those years ago. So I'm pleased to see you're all still interacting. You're still asking questions. Now you're talking about the Deckment case, which is exactly what I'm going to bring you to next. So we're going to go back to Ron, who's going to tell us about this classic case that happened in the 70s. So, Run VT. Let's go with Ron. Okay, I'm going to ask Ron to tell us about the classic Deckment incident in Livingston. Tell us about it, Ron.
Yeah, Vincent, as you say, the classic sighting. It's achieved, worldwide fame, probably Scotland's best known UFO sighting, and it's even been marked by a cairn and a plaque, and even a visitor's trail now. So it's certainly a classic sighting. To go back to the actual event itself, which took place on 9th November 1979, the witness in question was Bob Taylor, who was a 61-year-old forestry worker at the time, and he was out doing some round, I suppose you might say, doing his rounds, walking around the woods as he was required to do. And as he was coming down a path, he came upon this kind of open area, and on this open area he saw this grey round object. There's some been discussion of whether this object was just actually hovering, or whether it had some legs beneath it. But I think the thing, to my mind, which is really quite curious, is that you could actually see through bits of it. Some bits look solid, had a flange around it, I think it says grey in colour. Some bits you could see through, and other bits look solid. And this is really what I found really odd. But anyway, as Bob was standing there, two spiky balls emerged from this object and rolled towards him. Spiky objects like World War II mines, if you can picture what they were like, with spikes sticking out and on. And they came up to his trouser legs, and he had this peculiar smell in his nostril, and the next minute he remembers was coming to. No indication of how long he'd passed out for, mean various guesstimates, 20 minutes or more, something like that. And I say he had with him his dog, a red setter, was barking away when he woke up. Bob found it difficult to stand, but he managed to stagger back out his lorry. He staggered back to his lorry, couldn't get the lorry started, so he walked about a mile back to his house. And when he got home, his wife said, "Well, what's wrong with him?" Because his trousers were kind of cut. His wife said, "What's the matter?" And he said he'd been attacked by a spacecraft. And his wife said, "Well, he can't be." Words to this effect, there's no such thing. But he was absolutely convinced that he'd had this experience. He did have these rips on his trouser legs, which seemed to suggest that when these spiky balls came up to him, they had actually ripped his trousers. But again, there was some discussion about whether he'd ripped them when he was going over barbed wire, trying to get back home. Righto. Well, obviously something had happened to Bob. It was quite clear. So his wife rang his boss, and then the police were called in, and they did a search of the area. Bob, he was well enough to take people back to the area where this event had occurred, and right enough there were marks in the grass there, which seemed to indicate that something had been there, and someone had moved across the grass there and made these depressions in the grass. But though the police did a search of the area, they couldn't find anything to indicate what had happened to Bob. I mean, there was some suggestion, had he been attacked, had he been attacked by somebody, but there was nobody there, no evidence that had actually happened to him. Bob went to the hospital, to get checked out, but he didn't bother staying. He said he couldn't be bothered waiting, So he left shortly after this event. All right, that in summary is what happened to Bob. Since then there's been constant discussion about what might have happened to him and all kinds of explanations. For example, that he had an epileptic fit, that he saw a mirage of the planet Venus and this triggered some kind of epileptic fit. That was one explanation. I think everybody agreed that Bob was quite sincere, he wasn't making it up, that something odd had happened to him. But some of the explanations just, as far as I'm concerned, just do not fit the bill. I mean, other ones have been that what Bob saw was a remotely piloted vehicle, some kind of military object that he came upon, so there has been some attempt to kind of explain what happened to him, but nothing convinced. When I spoke to Bob, he was absolutely convinced that he had seen something out of this world. He felt he'd been privileged to see it, but he was completely matter of fact about it. He said, he had, people were trying to make out maybe he'd made this up to earn money or something like that. He said he never made any money out of it. He said other people have made money out of it, but he hadn't made any money out of it. No, he was convinced. I think even skeptics, didn't doubt that something had happened to Bob, but there have been attempts to explain it in what you might call rational terms, but nothing, to my mind, and I'm quite open-minded about things, but nothing to my mind actually has, if you like, provided an acceptable solution as to what happened to Bob on that day.
So, Ron, I'd just like to ask Ron a few questions further about the case, because since then all sorts of stories have come out about the case which may or may not be true. So I'm just going to ask Ron a few questions to clarify some of these things that have come out. Now, Ron, did the police, when they did their investigation, did they actually take plaster casts as evidence?
I think that is, I think that's accurate. I mean, the issue about these depressions was when they had been made, and there was some suggestion, for example, that other people working in the woods had put some of their equipment in this area, ladders and things like that, because there were round marks and, there were what you might call ladder type marks there, sort of spaced out. And there was some suggestion that these had been made at a completely different time, where people had left equipment there. But, the marks, according to police and according to other people who were there, looked fresh. It didn't look as if they'd been there for any particular length of time. So, I think, these issue of the marks in the ground kind of supports Bob's story. It's not 100% because, if the equipment was left there, then that might explain them. But, as I've said, they look quite fresh, according to people who were there at the time, and therefore, they could be seen as backing up Bob's description of what had happened.
Now, Ron, can you tell us about the story that was going around, or maybe it was a rumour, that the MOD came in afterwards and concreted the whole area to get rid of any evidence? Is that true, or just modern folklore?
I think that's modern folklore, yeah. The site, you can visit the site today, and it's changed, obviously, because since then, I think it was 1979, lots of trees have grown up, so it isn't as it were a clearing like it was at the time. You see pictures of it at the time, it is definitely clear of trees. Now trees have grown up, but there was never any concreting of the area. It's very, it's similar to what it was. I don't know, I imagine Bob would recognise it, even today, but trees have grown up, so it's not, strictly speaking, a clearing.
So, Ron, I just want to ask you a couple more questions about the actual incident itself. Did Bob say that when he saw this craft, it was saucer shaped, but not in the traditional flying saucer image that we might think of? He said, did he not say that it was actually semi-translucent?
Yeah, exactly. As I've said, it didn't look, it looked sort of right. You see the drawings that we made, it's kind of roundish with a flange line around it. But the thing to me that I found really quite surprising was that you could see through bits of it. Some bits looked solid, other bits, and it looked a bit what he described as like an emery board kind of material. So it was a really peculiar looking thing. And so when he said, you could see through it, you wonder what kind of object would be partly translucent, but yeah, it looks solid. It's really odd. And it does make you think, well, this could well have been something, totally out of this world. It's difficult to marry those two things, isn't it? An object you can see through, and an object that also looks solid, which does, it kind of suggests, to my mind, a kind of a dimensional kind of aspect to it. Something from another dimension that maybe Bob saw just for that split second, or several seconds, or whatever. But that he caught a glimpse of, but long enough to actually identify and describe what he saw.
Actually, I'm thinking of the science fiction film Contact with Jodie Foster. In that film, her craft started to become semi-translucent.
No, yes, that's right. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, no, that's right.
And also, Bob lost consciousness, didn't he? And he had his dog, and he lost consciousness.
That's correct. He did. He did lose consciousness. As I said, he had this sort of strange smell, and the next thing he remembered was coming to. So obviously he passed out. People are not sure just how long, he had passed out for. There's some suggestion, maybe was he abducted or beamed on to some, there has been that speculation, but that's just pure speculation because Bob didn't have any memory of anything else happening apart from having this very, very strange experience.
Now, I'd just like to say to the viewers watching, many years ago, actually in Livingston, there was a UFO group meeting, and Bob's trousers were brought to the meeting. And what happened was the trousers were given to a local psychic medium to do what's called psychometry. Do you remember that, Ron?
Yes, absolutely, I do remember that.
Can you remember?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was, I mean, psychometry done on the trousers, but as far as I'm aware, nothing in particular was picked up, because I think they'd passed through various hands, you know, so there had been quite a lot of contact on the trousers, but so I don't think anything in particular was picked up. I mean, I might add there that I have taken psychic mediums to the site a couple of times, and to see if they can pick up any further information. But I mean, there was no great revelations, except the psychics did say that something odd had happened there. They sensed it was an odd kind of area, something sort of special about it, somewhere where strange things might happen. And you know, that this could have been an out of this world experience kind of thing, but nothing definite. And as far as I'm aware, the same is true on the trousers. But I mean, it might have, you know, if they'd been taken straight to a psychic, maybe something might have been picked up. But I think because they'd passed through too many hands, that it just wasn't possible to pick up anything specific.
Now, the next thing I'd just like is, it's not really a question, it's more a comment, but Ron, I actually saw on the internet somewhere, I think it was NASA, and they were talking about the future of NASA vehicles on Mars. And I saw computer animation, and what that computer animation was a spherical object with spikes, with legs. The reason being that that is the best object to roll over rocky terrain, better than tyres. And I just think that's significant, that Bob encountered entities that had the same characteristics, because that's the kind of vehicle you would use to cross alien rough terrain, rather than use wheels.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that is interesting actually. Certainly, I can't remember seeing that bit, but I can understand the actual basis for it. That would be easier for an object to move along. I mean, you know, you think, well, if there are these objects coming from distant planets or distant galaxies or whatever, you know, the technology you'd expect to be quite significantly advanced. I mean, the object Bob saw was, what did he say, 20 feet across? You know, something like that. It wasn't a massive object or anything. So you say to yourself, well, would there be anything inside that? I mean, if there was anything inside it, I mean, any living being, then, you know, it didn't seem like a lot of space. So was that a remotely piloted object from somewhere else? You know, I mean, there had been various UFO sightings in the area round about the time, which I did document in UFO Scotland. So there was activity, you know. So was there, for example, a bigger ship way up in the sky? Was there something that was sent down which Bob encountered? I mean, I'm inclined to think, you know, that given the size of the object that Bob saw, I'm inclined to think that this was something that had been maybe sent down to investigate or whatever, you know, whatever it was doing, you know, which we can only speculate on. So I just wonder if it, you know, if it was an object of that nature that Bob actually encountered.
Now, just one more thing on this, Ron, is that I've seen there are actually, you can see some computer animations of this incident on YouTube, and that they're very realistic looking. Now, in the computer animations, the spiky ball things, they actually drop from underneath the craft and move at a great speed towards Bob. Is that true? Is that how?
Well, they certainly dropped from the craft, you know, and came towards him. I mean, I don't know how people are calculating the speed of that particular movement, because, you know, we just can't be sure how long they took to get there. I mean, certainly Bob didn't move out of the way, so I mean, you can say that it must have been fairly rapid, you know. So they didn't get time to run or anything. And he didn't say he was frozen to the spot, like sometimes happens with UFO encounters I've investigated. So they must have been pretty quick. So I mean, what they were trying to do, these spiky balls, again, that must be pure speculation. Obviously, he wasn't physically harmed. You know, he wasn't physically harmed. He did some scratches on him, but I mean, there's no evidence that he was actually injured by these objects. So what were they trying to do? I mean, you know, the more you think about what happened to him, you know, the stranger to my mind it becomes. Because, I mean, if you accept that this incident did take place, which I do, then, you know, it becomes hard to explain why it happened. I mean, what were they trying to do with Bob? I mean, they left him unconscious on the ground. I mean, it's very, very strange.
And Ron, the publicity that Bob received from this incident, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he featured in a BBC documentary on the event. Is that right?
Well, he's featured in various documentaries. You know, there's been quite. I mean, the Arthur C. Clarke series. You know, he was on that. He's been on quite a few things. So there's been of all the Scottish incidents, there's been more attention paid to this, you know, by the media and, you know, by TV, obviously, in particular, and TV documentaries, you know. So there's been a lot of investigation of it. I mean, you know, Bob certainly comes across as a convincing witness. I mean, you know, and I think people do have respect for him in that, because, you know, he was just quite straightforward about the thing. And when I spoke to Bob, I mean, he, as I said, he was just convinced that he'd had an out-of-world experience, and you know, he was excited, maybe the wrong word, but he was certainly impressed by it. You know, he thought it was something that unique as far as he was concerned, and you know, he stood by his account. I mean, there's been so much speculation on it that you know, it's difficult sometimes to actually focus on the event, because there's been all kind of explanations put forward. You know, there was, as I said, a remotely piloted vehicle, epileptic, even that the incident took place at a different spot, which is absolutely untrue, because I spoke to a lad. I say a lad. He was, you know, a man by the time I met him, who had actually, as a schoolboy, you know, passed that area, and it had been cordoned off. So he was absolutely convinced that you know, that this was the place that the encounter had happened. So I mean, you know, the suggestion that it took place somewhere else is just, to my mind, completely inaccurate. Because and other people who, you know, Malcolm Robinson was there, Philip Mantle, I mean, all these people, you know, were at the actual site. So there's plenty of evidence that this was the area where it took place, and Stuart Campbell. So there's, you know, plenty of evidence that this was the spot where it happened.
And because of the publicity, Bob ended up having to move away from Livingston.
Well, I mean, you know, when he was 61, so he retired a little while after, and I don't know if it was that drove him away from it. I mean, you know, it's always hard to say, isn't it? You know, people move he moved up to Blairgowrie, you know, I visited up there as well. So, but I mean, I don't know, you know, people get affected by UFO encounters in different ways. I mean, you know, people get laughed at and so on, you're ridiculed, you know, but I mean, so when people do move, there's always a suggestion that, you know, this is because of what they experience and people's attitude to it, you know. But Bob always stood by it. I mean, you know, he wasn't, if you like, trying to move away from it in that sense. I mean, he was still convinced to the end, you know, that he'd had this strange experience, and he was prepared to back it up constantly.
And I guess just finally, just in conclusion, this case is really unique. What he described is unique. It's never been repeated before or since.
I think, yeah, well, I mean, I think it was if you look at all the aspects to that, it was a unique encounter. It was investigated by the police, just after the incident occurred, and there's no obvious explanation. I mean, he'd passed out, that seemed quite clear. Police looked for yobs, for what another word, or people maybe had attacked him, but there was nothing there. And so you were left with this situation where Bob, convincing witness, describes quite clearly an event that happened to him. When they go there, they find depressions in the area where Bob said these balls had come out and this object had been. So there was a lot of evidence, and there been some criticism, well, Bob didn't stay at the hospital, but then he felt okay. He didn't want to hang around. he had these marks on his legs, obviously, and he'd got this, obviously shock and the like. But he didn't feel, that he was so unwell that he had to hang around. And no evidence either that he had any real medical condition that would have led to an epileptic fit. That something like that happened to him, seems like obviously a potential explanation, but loads of things have potential, have the potentiality for explaining it, but nothing to my mind has ever stood up in court, so to speak. So I'm certainly, what Bob saw, I don't think we can't be sure about it, but that he saw something out of this world, to my mind, is the most reasonable explanation. And though people try to explain it away, I don't think any of these supposed solutions actually stand up.
So that was Rod Halliday there, filling us in about the famous Deckman incident. Now, before I take you to the locations of where this the Deckman incident happened, I just want to go back through some of the comments, because the Carsden made a comment about the Yiddish, the men in black that came up in the Blair Gowrie case, and Carsden was saying that he had seen a group of people dressed like this crossing into a field near Stirling, and he thought it was quite odd that they might have been Orthodox Jews or even somebody making a film, and thought it was quite strange. And of course, Sid Freeman, in the Sid Freeman case, they see these Yiddish men walking in single file in a line up through the neighbour's path. And I'd also like to recount a strange incident that I witnessed. And I can't tell you exactly what year it was, but it was in Edinburgh, and it would have been about 1990 something. And I was in Edinburgh, and I was on Princes Street at the bottom of the Mound. And for those of you that know Edinburgh, you'll know exactly where I am. Just at the bottom of the Mound, there's the big art gallery, which is why Edinburgh was called the Athens of the North, because the art gallery looks very Greek with lots of pillars and amazing stonework. And I'm standing at the bottom of the Mound at the bus stop, and we see this Yiddish man on a bicycle, and we think nothing of it. It's just a Yiddish man on a bicycle. And he goes up the hill, and then all of us notice that he's not pedalling. And he's going up this hill on a bicycle and not pedalling. And I was aware that all of us at the bus stop thought this was odd. And we're all looking at this man going uphill on a bicycle without pedalling. I think this is strange. And I remember hearing someone in the bus stop saying something like, "Oh, it must be one of those electric bikes. It must be. It's an electric bike." Now, in those days, yes, no doubt there would have been some bikes that would be fitted with an electric battery, Not like nowadays in 2020 where you can get a hybrid mountain bike, an electric bike, no problem. They're really common now. I've even thought about getting one myself. But back in the 90s, such things weren't very common. So I just think it's interesting that various people are reporting strange encounters with men in black, but they look quite Yiddish. So who knows? Maybe there's a secret race of people among us who dress like that in order to fit in. That to me would make sense. But they appear to have strange powers. They can control matter with their minds, perhaps. So there we are. Let me take you on to the deckment. This is where the classic Bob Taylor encounter happens. So let's just run VT for those of you that have never been to the site before. Well, it's day 4, final day of filming. The final destination is Deckman today. So we're off to visit the classic location of Deckman. It's a bit dull today, although I'm grateful the rain stopped. So we'll see if we can get you some shots of the location. Let's see if we can find the plaque as well, because last time I was there, I think me and my friend were in the wrong part of the woods, couldn't find the plaque. So let's see how we get on. So that's me arrived at Deckman, at my final destination. Really quite excited, because I actually didn't think that the sat-nav would actually get me here. But it got me here in record time. I can't believe I've got here quicker than it took me to get to Blairgowrie or almost Falkland. So I'm going to get my camera kit set up. It's actually turned out to be a really nice day here in Livingston. The blue sky's coming out, so I'm really quite excited. We'll get the shots. So let's see if I can actually find the cairn. Apparently, Ron had told me that the plaque is actually signposted. So fingers crossed, we'll get to the location of the famous classic Bob Taylor Deckment Incident. So we're here, starting off the journey to Deckment, to the plaque site, and I'm pleased to say that Ron was right. The location is signposted, so I'm already feeling confident in getting to the location. Say, this walk's going to be a lot more easier than the Falkland Hill shoot. Now, Bob's encounter happened somewhere beyond these trees. I've not got to the site yet, but I thought I'd take some pointer shots meantime. Right, there's this interesting mound structure, but it looks like it's got some kind of cairn at the top. Not sure what it's for, but don't have time to explore that today. Alright. So I'm getting close now to the wooded area. Looks like this could be the entrance to the site. We're next to the golf course as well, so it's exciting. Not been here for over 20 years. Here we are actually in the forest, and it is kind of spooky. Every time I've come here, there's most definitely a spooky vibe about it. But I've been told just to follow this path, keep going, and it's at the bottom of the hill. So let's see how we get on. Now this cannot possibly be the plaque. This is too small. You can see that. That can't be the plaque, it's too small. Let's carry on. We've got a V fork to go here. I'm going to ask some locals how to get to the UFO plaque. Some people coming now. Good, I'm on the right track. People are very friendly here. They're pointing me in the right direction, so I can't possibly go wrong. Onwards, but not upwards this time. We're going downwards this time. Thank goodness. Oh my goodness. We're here. Can't believe it. We're at the plaque. This is the spot. Wow. It's changed. Seems to be much more paths than there used to be the last time I was here. I don't remember seeing so many paths, but it was about 25 years ago. But we made it. Here we are. This is the spot where Bob Taylor had his encounter. Quite incredible. Well, I'm going to head back now because I've been blessed. I've got a bit of sunshine for doing our shots today, and the rain's starting to come down now. So I'm going to head off soon, but it's just great to be back here at the site again. And it's not as creepy as it was the previous times I've been here. I don't know if it's because new paths have been put in, but I just can't remember this many paths being here 25 years ago during the unveiling of the plaque. But before I go, I'm just going to recount a short story about what happened the last time we were here. It would have been about 1995, I can't remember the exact year, and it was the official unveiling of the plaque. So we had UFO investigators, the press were here, there was a photographer from the Sun newspaper, we had psychic mediums, we had the rock band CE4 were here, and unfortunately, on that day, by that time everyone had arrived, the plaque had actually been stolen for the second time. So when the ufologists had a white cloth over this plaque here, unveiled it, there was no plaque to see. So the Sun newspaper couldn't really use that as an image in the newspaper. So what they did was they ended up just photographing the band CE4 lined up peeking behind the trees, and they ended up being in the Sun newspaper the next day. And that was one of the last times I was actually here. So it's great to see that the plaque is still in one piece now. It's still here. Hopefully it's not going anywhere, and it's great just to be at one of the most famous UFO landing sites in the world, not just Scotland. So I'm going to head back to the car and have some lunch. Bye for now. Cut! So there we were at the famous Deckment site, and I really enjoyed my visit to Livingston, and I was blessed because I thought the weather was going to be awful, but the sun came out, the wind died down, and we got the shots in the end. So, folks, we're coming in for the end of the show now. We're going for the sprint finish. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you an exclusive report of a sighting, and I can't tell you the name of the witness. I promised I wouldn't give any names away. But the witness actually saw the entities that Bob Taylor had seen, or perhaps very similar entities. And what I can tell you is that this happened between 2001 and 2005. And the witness in question was on a train travelling to Edinburgh from Fife. And she was travelling through Burnt Island stroke Kinghorn in that part of Fife. And she said that what she saw were 12-foot tall Hoberman sphere type objects rolling around in the field in broad daylight. And she immediately noticed that this was something that just wasn't normal. And she looked around the train carriage to see if she could grab a hold of other witnesses to come and look at this, but she was the only one in the carriage. And after that incident, she did some research into farm machinery, and of course couldn't find any such machinery. I mean, if you see these objects in a field, these are not devices that we currently use in agriculture. But the way that she described these objects was exactly the same type of shape as Bob Taylor described. And what she did was she did the right thing. She wrote down her experience, which is what you should do if you see a UFO or have an encounter. You write it down because it's easy to forget the details quickly. And she even drew a sketch of this object. And I'd hoped that I could get a copy of this sketch to show you tonight, but she couldn't. She couldn't actually find it. So there you are. There's another possible incident with these same beings in Scotland, but a few decades later. Very mysterious indeed. But so there you are. There's a world exclusive report that I can bring you. So we're coming into the end of the show, and I just want to give out a couple of mentions to some groups and organisations that I promised I would do. So I've mentioned already, but I just want to mention again, if you live in the central Scotland area and you're interested in UFOs, paranormal, ghosts, conspiracy theories, unexplained, there is a group on meetup.com. They're called the Unexplained Group, and you'll find them there, run by Linda and Duncan. And perhaps once lockdown is over, you'll be able to join in the meetings and the events. And we generally meet in Edinburgh. That's where we have our meetings. So check out the Unexplained Group on meetup.com. You'll find all the information there. And also, I want to mention our cousins across the pond. Although tonight's cases are very much Scottish ufology, I don't want to bar anyone. I promised that I would mention Dr. Lynn Katai, who I'm in contact with via Facebook. And Dr. Lynn runs the Phoenix Lights project. So if you're interested in UFOs in general, you might want to check out the Phoenix Lights incident. And I'm going to bring up a little image here. And this happened, I think it happened in the 90s, I'm not sure. But in Phoenix, these UFOs were seen, and they were described as triangular and very mysterious. I've seen some of the videos on YouTube, and I can't really, personally, I can't tell if these are craft from another planet. Are they from the future? Are they some kind of advanced holographic phenomena? I don't know. But if you check out Linda's site, the phoenixlights.net, to find out more information. It's a fascinating story, still unexplained. And I think Lynn herself actually witnessed this phenomena from her own house when this happened, and a lot of the local people wanted an explanation from the authorities. What's going on? And the authorities, of course, they didn't know what was going on. So I think, unfortunately, what happened was the local governor decided to have a press conference, and during the press conference, they got this man in an alien suit to come out, and it didn't go down too well. Let's just say it didn't go down too well, and perhaps the governor regretted putting on this show as an explanation for the lights. People were not happy. So there you are, Dr. Lynn Katai. I promised I would mention you in the show, and I've done that. So check out Lynn's website if you're interested in finding out about the Phoenix Lights case that happened some years ago. So that's us at the end of our show. It's been really good. I have to say, I'm really pleased that a lot of you have been interacting with Ron and each other and asking questions. That's been fantastic. So that all that remains for me to do is thank our guest and our UFO researcher, Ron Halliday. And I'd also like to give a big shout out to our raconteurs who joined in tonight and made the show very special. And I'm glad you joined us. So let's give a big thank you to William Ritchie, Kenneth Ray, Haley Pender, Sean Robertson, Nick Patterson, Ron Halliday. We had Linda Stark, Karsten Quisler, Willie Kay, Laura Binney, and Jay Robertson. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And also thank you to you, our viewers, for spending this time with us tonight. And just to recap, that this show will all be backed up onto YouTube tonight on the YouTube channel Vincent Anthony Media. So if any of your friends, colleagues, or family missed the show or want to see it, it's not a problem. It's all going to be kept on YouTube as a resource for people interested in this subject. It's not going anywhere. And I hope to meet some of you, perhaps next year, 2021, at the Scottish UFO Conference. And I'll look forward to that. And all I can say is bye for now, and we'll maybe see you next time on another Scottish live stream show, another UFO show, perhaps next year. Thanks for watching. Namaste. Bye for now. Run credits.